The metallic taste of blood had become familiar by Saturday morning, a constant reminder of Friday night's horror. She sat at her kitchen table, alone with her children sleeping upstairs, her jaw throbbing with a pain that radiated through her entire skull. When she tried to eat breakfast, her teeth wouldn't align properly. Upper and lower rows meeting at wrong angles, making even the softest food impossible to chew. Friday night had shattered more than just her jaw. It had broken the carefully constructed illusion she'd been maintaining. The facade that everything was manageable, that the violence was isolated, that she could protect her children from the truth living under their own roof. Her husband's fists had found her face again, but this time was different. This time, a neighbor had pulled into their driveway at exactly the wrong or perhaps exactly the right moment. The neighbor saw everything through the lit window. Her husband's rage, her defensive posture, the undeniable violence of his attack. What followed was chaos, a confrontation that brought the hidden abuse into public view, that made the private nightmare impossible to ignore any longer. Now she had a protection from abuse order, a legal document that felt both like a shield and a scarlet letter. Her husband was gone from the house, and she was alone with their children, trying to figure out how to survive the wreckage of her marriage while her jaw screamed for medical attention. She couldn't eat. She couldn't chew. When she looked in the mirror, she could see the subtle misalignment of her face, the way her jaw sat differently than it had just days ago. The pain was constant, sharp and throbbing by turns, a physical manifestation of years of abuse that had finally crossed into undeniable territory. She picked up her phone and called her mother-in-law, hoping for support, for maternal concern, for acknowledgement that she needed medical care. Instead, she found herself being talked out of seeking help. What can they even do for that? Her mother-in-law's voice came through the phone, dismissive and minimizing. The question hung in the air like poison gas, suggesting that a broken jaw wasn't worth professional medical attention, that the pain radiating through her skull was somehow manageable without intervention. But the real manipulation came next, wrapped in concern for grandchildren who would supposedly suffer if their father faced consequences for breaking their mother's face. If you report this, he won't get a job again. Her mother-in-law continued, her voice heavy with implication. Then the kids will suffer. They need their father to be able to work. You have to think about them. The words landed like additional blows. Her mother-in-law was asking her to prioritize her abuser's career prospects over her own broken jaw, to consider his future employability more important than her current medical emergency, to protect the man who'd just assaulted her rather than protect herself. Fear crept into the spaces between her throbbing jaw pain. Fear of ruining his life as if his choices hadn't already ruined it. Fear of his mother's anger, as if that anger mattered more than her own physical safety. Fear of being seen as the villain for seeking medical care for injuries he inflicted. The gaslighting was working. She sat at her kitchen table, unable to eat, her jaw misaligned from violence, seriously considering whether she had the right to seek medical attention. The absurdity of this internal debate spoke volumes about the psychological damage that accompanies physical abuse, the way victims are trained to prioritize everyone's well-being except their own, to minimize their own suffering, to protect their abusers from consequences. Her children would wake soon, and she'd have to figure out how to feed them when she couldn't feed herself. She'd have to explain why Daddy wasn't home without traumatizing them further. She'd have to navigate custody arrangements and protection orders and the practical realities of single parenthood while her jaw healed improperly because she was too afraid to seek medical care. The neighbor who witnessed the assault had given her an unexpected gift: evidence. Someone outside the family had seen the truth, making it harder for others to deny or minimize what happened. But even with that gift, even with a protection order, even with visible injury, she found herself being manipulated into silence and self-neglect. Her jaw needed medical evaluation. It might need surgical intervention. Without proper treatment, it could heal incorrectly, causing permanent damage to her ability to eat, speak, and live without chronic pain. But she sat at her table, phone in hand, wondering if she was the asshole for wanting to be seen by medical professionals after her husband broke her face. The question itself revealed how deeply the abuse had damaged her sense of reality, her understanding of her own rights, her ability to recognize that seeking medical care for violent injuries isn't selfish, it's survival. If you've experienced domestic violence, you know this internal struggle between seeking help and protecting your abuser. If you haven't, understand that this is what abuse looks like. Not just physical violence, but the psychological manipulation that makes victims question their right to heal. What would you tell this woman? How can we support survivors who face these impossible choices? National Domestic Violence Hotline 1-800-799-7233. Text START to 88788.